The Nile River shimmered in the Egyptian sun. Birds sang sweetly in the tall reeds. A baby boy slept peacefully in a basket. His name was Moses. He was very special. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had made a cruel law. It said all baby boys from Moses' family must go into the river. But Moses' mother wanted to save him. She hid her baby in the reeds. Pharaoh's daughter found Moses. She felt sorry for the little baby. She decided to raise him as her own son. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace. He learned about Egyptian life. It was a good life, but Moses never forgot his true people. Moses grew up strong and smart. Pharaoh's daughter was kind to him. He wore fine linen clothes. He learned to read hieroglyphs. He lived in a beautiful palace. One day Moses saw something terrible. An Egyptian was hurting one of his people. Moses felt angry. He knew it was wrong. He helped his people, but he had to flee into the desert. Moses was alone. He wandered in the desert. He was sad to leave his life. But he knew he had done the right thing. He was ready for a new adventure. The desert was hot and dusty. Moses saw only rocks and sand. He missed his home. He missed his family. He was lonely. Then Moses saw a bush. It was on fire, but not burning up. A voice spoke from the bush. It was God. God had a very important job for Moses. He wanted Moses to help his people. They were suffering in Egypt. God told Moses to go back to Egypt. He wanted Moses to lead his people to freedom. Moses was scared, but he trusted God. He knew he had to be brave. He had to help his people. Moses returned to Egypt. He went to Pharaoh. "Let my people go," Moses demanded. Pharaoh laughed. He said no. God was angry with Pharaoh. He sent terrible plagues to Egypt. Locusts filled the sky. The Nile River turned to blood. Still, Pharaoh refused to listen. He would not let the Israelites go free. Moses pleaded with Pharaoh. He knew his people were suffering. Finally, after the 10th plague, Pharaoh agreed to free the Israelites. Moses had won. He was ready to lead his people to freedom. Section 5, A Sea of Hope. The Israelites followed Moses out of Egypt. They were excited to be free, but Pharaoh changed his mind. He sent his army to chase them. The Israelites were trapped between the army and the Red Sea. They were scared, but Moses reassured them God would help them. Moses raised his staff. The sea parted. The Israelites walked across the seabed on dry land. When Pharaoh's army tried to follow, the sea closed up. Pharaoh and his soldiers drowned. The Israelites were safe. They were free at last. They sang and danced with joy. They were so grateful to Moses and to God. Section 6, A Mountain of Law. The Israelites traveled through the desert. They were led by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Moses was their leader. He listened to God. He guided his people through the harsh wilderness. God called Moses up to Mount Sinai. The mountain was covered in smoke. Lightning flashed. It was an awesome sight. God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. These were special rules to live by. They would help the Israelites be good and kind. Moses came down the mountain. He shared the 10 Commandments with the people. He told them to obey God's laws. The Israelites were happy to have rules. They wanted to be good people. They wanted to honor God. Section 7, Manna from Heaven. The desert was a hard place to live. The sun was hot. Food and water were scarce. The Israelites complained. They missed their old lives. They wished they had never left Egypt. Moses prayed to God. He asked for help. God listened. He sent food from heaven. Every morning, small white flakes covered the ground. They tasted like honey wafers. The Israelites called it manna. God also provided water from a rock. He took care of his people, even when they complained. Moses continued to lead his people through the desert. He taught them about God. He reminded them of the 10 Commandments. He helped them to trust that God would always be with them. Section 8, The Golden Calf. One day, Moses went back up Mount Sinai. He needed to speak to God again. The Israelites waited below. They were restless. They were tired of waiting for Moses. They wanted a God they could see. They built a golden calf. They worshipped it as their God. They sang and danced around it. They forgot about the one true God. God was very angry. He told Moses what the Israelites had done. He was ready to punish them. Moses came down from the mountain. He saw the Israelites worshipping the golden calf. He was furious. He smashed the stone tablets with the 10 Commandments. He reminded the people that there was only one God. They needed to trust and obey him. Section 9. A Promised Land. Moses led the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness. They faced many dangers. They learned many lessons. They grew stronger in their faith. Finally, they reached the Jordan River. It was the border of Canaan, the Promised Land. Moses climbed to the top of Mount Nebo. From there, he could see the Promised Land. It was a land flowing with milk and honey. God told Moses he could not enter the Promised Land, but he allowed him to see it. Moses blessed his people. He reminded them to love God and follow his laws. Then he died. Joshua, a brave leader, took Moses' place. He led the Israelites across the Jordan River and into the Promised Land. They were finally home.